The final signature appeared on the screen. Another billion-dollar acquisition closed. I should have felt a surge of triumph, the familiar adrenaline of a successful hunt. Instead, my gaze was fixed outside the reinforced glass of my study. Down on the manicured lawn, my son, Leo, was laughing. It was a full-bodied, carefree laugh that I hadn't heard in months. The source of his joy was the new mailman, a lanky fellow in a worn-out uniform, with a slightly vacant, goofy smile that seemed permanently plastered on his face. My dog, Buster, a pedigreed beast who usually regarded strangers with aloof suspicion, was wriggling at the man's feet like a common puppy, tail thumping a frantic rhythm against the ground. An unfamiliar irritation prickled my skin. This man, this simple, shabby man, had coaxed more joy out of my son in 5 minutes than I had in a year of carefully planned, expensive outings. I ended the video conference with an abrupt click. The silence of my study felt heavy. It was a fortress of solitude, filled with rare books I never read and art I barely noticed. It was from here I ruled my empire. And it was from here I watched my son live a life that felt increasingly distant from my own. Ever since this new mail carrier, Sam, had started his route, my brief stints at home between business trips had been punctuated by these scenes. Sam looked slow. That was the only word for it. There was a childlike openness to his face that, in my world, would have been eaten alive. He moved without urgency, and when he spoke to Leo, his words were simple, deliberate, as if he were carefully choosing each one from a limited supply. And yet, Leo was captivated, and Buster, my loyal guard dog, adored him. This bothered me more than I cared to admit. It felt like a judgment on my own inability to connect. My butler, Peterson, would bring me my afternoon espresso, and I'd ask, trying to sound casual, what do they even talk about? Peterson, ever discreet, would simply reply, "They speak of snails and clouds, sir, and the way the sun warms the pavement." It was nonsense, utter, infuriating nonsense. I tried to counteract it. I bought Leo the latest virtual reality headset, a state-of-the-art drone. The boxes would sit in his room, unopened. He'd rather sit on the curb with Sam watching an ant carry a crumb. One afternoon, I was home for a rare full week. I watched from the window as Sam approached the gate. He didn't just put the mail in the box. He stopped, pulled a small, crumpled bag from his pocket, and carefully scattered some seeds on the ground for the sparrows. He then noticed a fledgling that had fallen from a nest in the old oak tree. With painstaking gentleness, he cupped the tiny bird in his large hands, found a ladder leaning against the gardener's shed, and slowly, carefully returned the bird to its nest. Leo watched, his expression one of pure reverence. I felt a strange pang in my chest. It wasn't annoyance this time. It was something else, something I couldn't name. The next day, I saw him again. This time, he was sharing his sandwich, a meager-looking thing on white bread, with a stray cat that lived in the hedges. He broke off a piece, laid it on the ground, and sat patiently until the skittish animal crept forward to eat. He spoke to it in a low, soothing murmur. I couldn't hear the words, but the tone was one of pure, uncomplicated kindness. My fortress of judgment was beginning to show cracks. This man wasn't just slow, he was gentle. He wasn't just simple, he was good. The thought was disconcerting. It challenged the very foundation of my world, where strength was measured in profit margins and kindness was a liability. The day of the fire started like any other travel day. Peterson had packed my bag, my suit was crisp, my mind already 3,000 miles away, strategizing for a meeting in Singapore. The car was waiting. I gave Leo a quick, slightly clumsy hug. He smelled like grass and sunshine. "Be good," I said, the standard, hollow phrase of a departing father. "Sam's going to show me a caterpillar cocoon today," he replied, his eyes bright with excitement. I almost said something dismissive, something about how he had a new microscope he could be using instead. But I saw the pure, unadulterated joy in his face, and, for the first time, I just nodded. "That sounds nice," I managed. The words felt foreign in my mouth. In the car, gliding silently toward the private airfield, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. The deal I was flying to close would be my biggest yet. I was at the pinnacle of my career. I glanced at my phone, scrolling through market reports. Then a news alert popped up. Massive fire spreads through Northwood Estates. Northwood Estates? My neighborhood. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I clicked the link. The video was shaky, filmed on a phone. Smoke billowed into the sky, thick and black. Then the camera panned, and my blood ran cold. Through the chaos, I saw it. The Italian marble facade, the twin gables I'd designed myself. My house. It was my house, engulfed in a roaring inferno. "Turn around!" I yelled at the driver, my voice cracking. "Turn the car around now!" The smooth, silent ride became a frantic race against time. I jabbed at my phone, dialing Peterson. No answer. Straight to voicemail. I tried the house landline. A dead, empty tone. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering. I needed to call someone, a neighbor, anyone who was there, who could tell me where Leo was. And then it hit me. A wave of nausea, more terrifying than the sight of the fire. I didn't have a single neighbor's number. I had lived in that house for 10 years, surrounded by other mansions, other families. I knew them only by the model of their cars and the names on their mailboxes. We nodded at each other from behind the tinted windows of our luxury vehicles. We were islands of wealth in a sea of perfect lawns, utterly disconnected. My isolation, once my shield and my pride, was now a cage. I was completely, terrifyingly alone. News radio filled the car with horror. The fire had started with a gas line explosion. It had spread with shocking speed. They were talking about multiple structures, about difficulties getting emergency crews in, about casualties. The word hung in the air, a physical thing. I squeezed my eyes shut, seeing Leo's face, smelling the sunshine in his hair. The drive felt like an eternity, each red light a personal torture. When we finally screeched to a halt behind a line of fire trucks, the scene was apocalyptic. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and despair. My home, my monument to success, was a blackened, skeletal ruin, still hissing as firefighters drenched it in water. The marble was cracked and scorched. The gables were gone. It was all gone. But none of that mattered. "Leo!" I screamed, vaulting from the car and ducking under the yellow police tape. "My son! Is he out?" A firefighter, his face grim and smeared with soot, grabbed my arm. "Sir, you can't go in there. It's not stable." "Where is he?" I pleaded, my voice raw. "A boy? We haven't found a boy, sir. We evacuated the houses we could reach in time." He didn't have to say the rest. My house was not one of them. The world tilted. The sounds of the sirens faded into a dull roar. My legs gave out, and I fell to my knees on the wet asphalt. I had spent his entire life building an empire for him, and in the process, I had lost him. I had been closing a deal while my son, I couldn't even finish the thought. Then, through the fog of my grief, I heard it. A faint but insistent sound. A bark. Buster! Hope, sharp and painful, pierced through the despair. I scrambled to my feet and ran, following the sound around the side of the scorched property toward the back garden, which was miraculously less damaged. And there, huddled against the far stone wall, was a small, soot-covered figure. "Leo!" He looked up, his face streaked with tears and grime, and ran into my arms. I held him so tightly I thought he might break, burying my face in his hair, sobbing with a relief so profound it was agonizing. He was safe. He was alive. Buster was there, circling us, whining and nudging my hand. And lying on the grass beside them, unnervingly still, was Sam. His mailman's uniform was shredded and burned. One of his arms was bent at an unnatural angle, and a dark stain was spreading across his shirt. His usually smiling face was pale and contorted in pain. Paramedics were rushing toward him. "What happened?" I asked Leo, my voice trembling as I stroked his hair. He clung to me, his small body shaking. "The house. It got so hot, Dad," he whispered. "There was smoke everywhere, and I couldn't breathe. A big piece of the ceiling fell, and it blocked the door to my room. I was trapped." I held him tighter, imagining his terror. "How did you get out?" He pointed a shaky finger. "Buster did. He found a broken window and squeezed out. He ran outside and started barking and barking. Sam was there. He was just leaving Mrs. Gable's house, and he saw the smoke. Buster ran right to him and pulled on his pants." Leo took a shuddering breath. "Sam, he didn't wait. He told me the fire trucks were coming, but he didn't wait. He broke the big window in the playroom. He wrapped his jacket around his arm and punched it, then he climbed in." I looked at the unconscious form of the mailman being carefully lifted onto a stretcher. The simple man, the slow man. "He found me in my room," Leo continued, his voice muffled against my chest. "He picked me up. He put his own jacket over my face so I wouldn't breathe the smoke. He was carrying me to the window when another part of the roof came down. He threw me toward the window, and he covered me with his own body." My son was alive because the man I had disdained, the man I had judged as inferior, had walked through fire for him. He had shown a bravery I only pretended to have in boardrooms. I rode in the ambulance, not with my son, who was being checked over, but was miraculously unharmed, save for a few scrapes, but with Sam. I watched the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, a machine breathing for him. Later at the hospital, I sat in the sterile waiting room, Leo asleep with his head in my lap. Peterson had arrived, his face a mask of grief and relief. He told me he had been in the basement when it happened and had gotten out through a utility exit. He couldn't get back to Leo. No one could. No one but Sam. The next morning, I stood by Sam's bed. He was awake, bandaged and bruised, but awake. His arm was in a cast, and he had severe burns along his back and shoulders. He saw me and gave me a weak, lopsided version of his usual goofy smile. I opened my mouth to speak, to say thank you, but the words felt laughably inadequate. What do you say to the man who saved your entire world? So I just stood there, this powerful billionaire, humbled and speechless. Leo walked up to the bed and gently placed his small hand on Sam's uninjured one. "The cocoon hatched, Sam," he said softly. "It was a monarch butterfly." Sam's tired eyes brightened, a flash of the simple joy I had once found so irritating. He squeezed Leo's hand faintly. "Beautiful," he whispered, his voice raspy. In the ashes of my mansion, I had lost everything I thought was important, and in a stark white hospital room, I found what truly was. It wasn't in a stock portfolio or a signed contract. It was in the loyal bark of a dog, in the unwavering courage of a kind man, and in the small, warm hand of my son holding on to his hero.